Welcome back. I'll finish that later. This is Chicken Philosophy, Meccan Revelations, Part 17, in which I will continue reciting Meccan Revelations, picking up right where Edward left off last time. Those who saw it might recall. Sorry, just doing a little bit of maintaining things here. It was the Dune episode where things got a little weird. And, Ibn Arabi basically seemed to be outlining or explaining the Islamic apocalypse prophecy with their version of the Messiah, the Mahdi, coming with a sword and all this other stuff. And, it was a little off-putting, you might say. And so, generally it's been a bit of a dark time. I mean, I enjoy it. Hopefully, maybe you do too, if you're twisted like me. I enjoy it on its own level. The young Carl Jung and his shenanigans, and Teilhard de Chardin's been okay lately-ish. And Martin Luther hasn't. And Ibn Arabi has gone into some stuff that I wasn't expecting from Ibn Arabi. So, as a result of all of this, Gwydion recently, for those who don't know, decided to make an executive decision and add The Secret of the Golden Flower, which is sort of Taoist alchemy. He added that book to the wheel, and so now there's 5 books, not just 4. So he was complaining for a while about how Chicken Philosophy had become 100% Abrahamic, so now it's only math. 80% Abrahamic and 20% Taoist alchemy, I suppose. Chinese. So, feel free to check that out. There's the playlist for The Secret of the Golden Flower. I, should let you know that he's being a little bit extra Gwydion in that episode. He's kind of the id among us, you might say, being generous. There were times in the past where he was the id kind of under the control of the shadow, you might say, or perhaps the evil persona, if you're into the U documents. But I tend to believe that Gwydion is serving the divine in his own way. But it can be off-putting. A dog is still a dog, even when it's got a leash on. All right, don't tell him I said any of this. I will go ahead. He mentions in that episode that Edward is young, Pymander is younger. In case you were wondering, of the 4, I'm the oldest, and Gwydion kind of was my shadow originally. He was kind of something that exploded out of the controlled nature that I had cultivated over a period of years. He was the anonymous internet troll that I became at night. And then during the day, I was wearing the white robe and, being a shepherd of men, which in Greek is Pymander, incidentally. I felt like sharing something because in that previous episode, I'll get to this in a moment. I'm ready for Ibn Arabi to win me back. I'm hoping that now that all that explanation of the pre-existing apocalypse prophecy, now he's going to get into perhaps like an esoteric interpretation of it. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, the sword maybe is truth, like they say the sword of truth is the one coming out of Jesus' mouth in the book of Revelation. Maybe true Islam means something very positive, and setting aside all the stuff of modern American consideration, and setting aside current events and recent current events and things like that. Anyway, in reference to Gwydion was kind of going on and on about how East and West are kind of an artificial construct, but I just wanted to play a fun little game. If we define East, as many people in the 20th century and before have defined it as basically generally China, and if we define West as basically generally Western Europe, okay, that's all problematic in itself, but let's just say, play along with me for a moment. Then one thing that we can, or a few things that we can credit to the Eastern way of life are things like printed money and coins and banking and the printing press, all originated in China. And something that we can credit as definitely being a Western thing would be communism, product of Karl Marx. So, the yin-yang goes round and round, East is West and West is East, and they change places and take places, and there's a dot in one that's the color of the other. And also, if you go back a little further, there were Greek kings that became like Buddhists of note, like not quite a sage, but he was a well-known Buddhist in the early period of Buddhism, was a Greek king of present-day Punjab, I assume. One of those who inherited that part of what Alexander the Great, so-called, had conquered. So there's been a lot of like back and forth. If you look at that little area between, East Mediterranean and like where India kind of touches the Middle East. Before there was like before there was this stuff in the Middle East kind of as a domineering force, there was a lot of flow back and forth, a flow of ideas, a flow of coins and riches and spices and things like that, going all the way back to, the Roman Empire and before. But these days people seem to imagine that like the Pacific Ocean, that California is west and like, Japan is east, and they're so different that they couldn't possibly have anything in common. But yeah, that's a very, very myopic way of viewing the world and history and the human race. Anyway, let's go ahead and get to today's reading. Editor Edward, would you mind queuing up some music? Thank you, Editor Edward. I don't know what he's playing, but hopefully it's good. And it's that time again, that magical time where it's time for me to sacrifice, sound quality for air conditioning. Hopefully it won't be too distracting. Okay, Ibn Arabi, I'm not comparing myself to like an abused, lover who has gone off and thought about the good times and gaslighted him or herself and, is ready for a candlelight dinner and already planning to be won back by Ibn Arabi. I'm not comparing myself to that either. I'm just saying, let's get to this. I'm ready to come out of the dark times of chicken philosophy and see the dawning of a new era for chicken philosophy. Let's go. Now, since the rightly guided Imam, parentheses, Mahdi, end parentheses, knows this, bracket parentheses, i.e., the victorious divine support flowing from the sincerity of perfect faith, okay, end bracket parentheses, he acts accordingly and is the most truly sincere of the people of his time. God, I hope it's not me. Fuck. No, I'm just kidding. So his helpers are the guides, while he is the rightly guided one. And this is the extent of what the Mahdi attains of the knowledge of God with the aid of his helpers. Okay. But as for the seal of Muhammadan sainthood, which, as the Chodkowitz and friends have pointed out, is means universal in Ibn Arabi speak. We'll just go with that for now. Yes. But as for the seal of Muhammadan sainthood, all of the creatures, of all of the creatures, he is the one who knows God best. There is no one in his own time, nor after his time, who better knows God and the details of his judgment. For he and the Quran are brothers, just as the Mahdi and the sword are brothers. Oh, what was this guy? This guy. The guy who was the original owner of this ring, he had a magical motto in Latin, and I don't remember the Latin, but I think the English was, God is my guide, the sword is my companion. It's pretty cool, right? Anyway. Okay, where were we? You should know that is this in quotes? No. You should know that I am uncertain about the length of this Mahdi's rule. This is Ibn Arabi talking to you, the viewer of Chicken Philosophy, through his instrument of communication, which is known as Frater BT. He's saying that to you, right? You should know that I, Ibn Arabi, am uncertain about the length of this Mahdi's rule, because as far as this world is concerned, I have not sought God's verification of that, nor have I asked him to specify that or any other temporal happening among the engendered realities, bracket parentheses, of this world, and bracket parentheses. See, this is the Ibn Arabi I like. It's not a priority for him. It's temporal. Oh, apocalypse? Great. What's for breakfast? Okay. I feel him coming back to me. Except for whatever God happens to teach me spontaneously, without my seeking it. For I am afraid that during the time when I am asking God to inform me about some engendered or temporal thing, I will miss out on some portion of my awareness of him. Amen, brother. Or Amin, I should say. Like when you're standing before the throne of God and his ineffable glory is shining down upon you, don't talk. Just be there. Just experience it. Don't say, God, if you're omniscient and omnipotent and omnibenevolent, why is there evil? Like, fucking shut up. Anyway, sorry. So instead, I will miss out on some portion of my awareness of him. So instead, I have surrendered my affair to God in his kingdom. Mulk. Do you think maybe that might be related to its sister word in its sister language Hebrew, Malkut? Yes, i.e. in this world, letting him do with me as he pleases. Yes, that sounds like a Sufi. So I was right. I don't know if you're watching every episode of Chicken Philosophy, which most likely you're not. I know. They come out often and you don't have a lot of time. I get it. Or interest. I understand. I mean, who could deal with my voice and face coming at you for more than 5 minutes at a time? But yeah, we've been going through a process, by we, I mean me, in all these outfits, of coming to terms with the previous episode, the Dune one, and concluding that he wasn't saying all this. He was just letting you know what he's going to be talking about. He's like, okay, now I'm going to talk about the Mahdi. Now let me explain the Mahdi. There's this prophecy where he's going to come with a sword and he's going to beat everybody up and say, this is the real Islam and those are the fake Islams and all this stuff. And it was kind of like, what? I didn't expect this from Ibn Arabi. But if I were to come on here and say, hey, let me explain my take on some bullshit in Christianity, for instance. Now, here's the bullshit that I'm going to give my take on, and then I were to only tell you the bullshit that I'm quoting directly from Joel Osteen or something, right? and then you were to finish an episode and be like, I didn't expect that from BT, then you also would be making the same mistake that I made by doubting Ibn Arabi. I'm back. I was ready to be back. I was like there with the flowers and the candles and the nice music, the French waiter and the guy with the violin and everything. And I was like, okay, all right, come tell me why I was wrong in our previous argument, right? Because that's what men do. I mean, regardless of gender, anybody can gaslight themselves back into an abusive relationship, right? I mean, the amygdala doesn't work when there's oxytocin in the brain, right? They are kind of mutually exclusive. When you get shocked and terrified, right, by something that's reminding you of all the previous traumas, then the oxytocin goes away. But then later, when you stop thinking about it and you start remembering the good times, the oxytocin comes back. But and you forget the terror and you go back. Don't go back this time. Don't go back. I mean, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to someone else. The person that applies to. Well, at least think about it. Maybe you're better off. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know who I'm talking to or what I'm talking about, really. I'm just saying, pay attention to what's going on in here and the oxytocin amygdala thing. Never mind. I'm not going to take my own advice. I'm going to keep reading and getting more and more excited about how much I love this stuff. You should not... Wait, where was I? Accept whatever God, yes, letting him do with me as he pleases. And indeed, I have seen a number of the people of God, parentheses, i.e. the Sufis, end parentheses, seeking to obtain from him the knowledge of temporal and gendered happenings, and especially trying to become acquainted with the Imam of, bracket parentheses, this and bracket parentheses, time. Yeah. God. Me too. I mean, not the Sufis, but the other folks. But I was ashamed to do that, and afraid that my lower bodily, afraid that, bracket parentheses, my lower bodily, and bracket parentheses, nature, would rob me, bracket parentheses, of my knowledge of God, and bracket parentheses, if I were to associate with them while they were in that state. I mean, I resonate with a lot of what he's saying. Like, there was a lot of times when there were other people that are like, we've got to call on this specific angel and ask these specific questions about why this is happening in the newspaper. And I was just like, yeah, okay, while you're doing that, I'll be in the vault chanting, Yeshua, mi omnia. Yeshua, mi omnia. They're like, well, but practical magic. Why? Why practical? Because the students, they're coming in and they want to know about practical magic. So we have to teach them practical magic because we have to get dues from them so that we can pay their rent. And I'd be like, that's when Gwydion was born. They'd come out and like, you fucking idiot! And it was sort of BT's dark side. Now you know. Approximately. A cartoon version of the birth of Gwydion. There was more to it, but I'm never going to tell that story. Except I told Ryan when we were drunk. Anyway, of my knowledge of God, if I were to associate with them while they were in that state. So I asked God only that he grant me stability in a single short what? Short of sort. In a single sort. Wow, that was interesting. I saw sort and thought, wouldn't it be funny if I said short, and then decided not to say short and instead to say sort, and I ended up saying short. That was a short circuit in my brain. And a single sort of knowledge of him. Even though he constantly transformed in my... What? Yeah. Even though I be constantly transformed in my bracket parentheses inner and bracket parentheses states, and he did not refuse me. Okay, all right, I'm officially back on board. Ibn Arabi's cool. He's no longer in the category with Martin Luther. Teilhard de Chardin, he's all right. He has his moments. And, we're getting into... And Martin Luther, Carl Jung is cool. We're reading, his journal entries from 1913 onwards. So we're going to slowly watch him go through all the awkward early years. And that's fun. That's like listening to early Beatles. You're like, oh, yeah, can we turn this off and listen to some Sgt. Pepper's or something, but it's time to listen to the early Beatles, and it's time to read the 1913 Carl Jung journal entries, and it's fun in its own way, as long as you're not expecting anything but silliness. And the primordial origins of his later philosophy. And Secret of the Golden Flowers, good. Check it out. I recommend it. And, this is a good place to stop here. Let me just, there's some italics, which means it's Mr. Chodkowick. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Ibn Arabi concludes this section by recapitulating in a beautiful poetic dialogue with God. Well, can we hear it? Please? Too long to translate in its entirety here. You suck. His discovery of one of the central spiritual insights of his work, the paradoxical fact that his continual transformation of the heart, capital H, fully perceived only by the true knowers, is itself the perpetually renewed theophany of the noetic realities, in no way contradicting the transcendent unity of the divine essence. And then here's a quote, and I think this is Ibn Arabi talking. So when I asked, bracket parentheses, God, and bracket parentheses, that question, bracket parentheses, about the apparent conflict between the divine unity and the multiplicity of theophanies in our experience, and bracket parentheses, he showed me my ignorance and said to me, quote within quotes, are you not content that you are like me? End quote within quotes, end quote. Thank you for blowing my mind a little right there. So multiple theophanies, but divine unity. Why is it like that? He showed me my ignorance and said, are you not content that you are like me? That's koan level shit. That goes beyond the sound of one hand clapping. I'm going to go ahead and today we'll do a little bit of, as like we did, back when things were normal. A little bit of Hafiz from a different part of the world at around the same time, same Sufism. He was a Sufi too, around the same time. Oh, this was the thing that... There's a bookmark in here. Oh, yeah, because we were going to keep reading because this turned out to be a lot longer than I realized. But rather than doing that, I'm going to read this short thing that came after it. Why not be polite? Everyone is God speaking. Why not be polite and listen to him?